Hello and welcome to today's program as the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston hosts a conversation with Chris Olson, Council's Global Leader of Influence. I'm Sandia Bayou, Director of Development at the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, a bipartisan, nonprofit organization focused on better understanding of world issues and how they affect our personal lives. It's our hope that you and your families are doing well and staying healthy. And now, indeed, more than ever, it's so important to stay informed about what is happening not only in our city, but around the world. World Affairs Council of Greater Houston brings those foreign affairs and local affairs experts right into your home. And Chris is one of them. Chris, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you today.
Again, it's my absolute pleasure to host you, to welcome you here at our little webinar. Thank you for ongoing support of our council, our mission, and all the wonderful accomplishments that you do for the greatest city of Houston. I wanted to check in and see how you are doing, how your family is doing, how Mayor and his team is currently doing.
Well, thank you very much. And again, it's an absolute honor to be selected as a global leader of influence by the World Affairs Council, which has just a fantastic role to play in Houston here as we, being such an international city, looks to continue to educate and leverage the city's international reach and role for the improvement and the betterment of all of our Houston residents. I'm, as many of you will know, we're in the middle of our COVID crisis, and fortunately my family is doing well and healthy. The city is fully mobilized to try to look after the health and safety of our fellow Houston residents. Many of us, with the slowdown in international affairs and like anything, and just like this conversation having gone virtual, international affairs too has gone virtual, and with that has come a change the way we do business. But we, with the international affairs team here, is also trying to do everything we can to support not only our international community here in Houston, but the broader Houston community in terms of helping find options and opportunities for protective equipment and everything to keep us all safe during this crisis.
Absolutely, and thank you again for all that you do and what the city does and the leadership. Again, given this crisis, and so we are very grateful for your and Mayor's leadership. As you have already indicated, you are affiliated with Mayor's office, and let me highlight to some of our participants a little bit about your role and other accomplishments. You serve as Director of Trade and International Affairs for City of Houston. In your role, you manage our city's international business development efforts, as well as engagement with foreign governments and international organizations. Prior to starting with the city in 2018, you held positions as a military officer, business consultant, and a diplomat. You had mentioned to me earlier that you remain involved in entrepreneurship and venture capital, and especially how it applies to Houston, and how it could even apply even more so. Would you share additional thoughts on this?
Absolutely. So Houston, as Houston has grown and developed, of course, Houston has its foundations in the oil and gas industry, and Houston's economy was very strongly grounded in that. And that has by its very nature, has an international nexus to it, which is part of how Houston became such a great global city. With the changing economies and with Mayor Turner's focus on trying to make Houston an even more innovative city, a city that's really part of this digital transformation and a technology transformation, bringing startups and a startup-based ecosystem into Houston was of increasing importance. Sure. My MBA focused a lot on entrepreneurship and strategy, and with that came, how do we try to create an environment where we can grow startups? And big part of that is attracting startups, but the other part of it is attracting the money that enables startups to grow. Yeah. So kind of as an offshoot of that, the passion grew of how do we help try to find the capital and the right kinds of startups to build Houston's next generation economy, be that in a alternate energy sector, be that in a real digital economy sector, but it's part of what's going to become the future of Houston's global economy. And with that, and where we can create kind of an interesting niche that can be a little bit different from some of the other startup capitals of the United States, is we have such an international population here with students and residents from all over the world that we can differentiate ourselves a little bit by drawing in capital and drawing in innovative companies from all over the world to set up shop and get started here in Houston.
Oh, right. absolutely recognize that and celebrate the diversity of the city and welcome adding a different industry perhaps as well to make it more balanced. And a little bit on the globally part of the conversation, you have been so passionate about the intersection of international affairs and global business, as you said. You say that in today's world, you cannot separate these two issues. How so?
Well, I think again, looking at how Houston really developed our economy, we look at the oil and gas sector in the United States. It's driven by mineral rights and a lot of the owners of the individual citizens. In most foreign countries, that is a national resource, and it's a very close resource to the government because it really derives, in a lot of countries, derive a massive amount of their wealth, and hence their national security is based on a lot of those extractive resources. And now what are kind of a lot of the growing industries in there. So as I've worked around the world, the economies of so many of these countries are tied to the decisions they make and the kinds of decisions they make, because their national security is tied very closely with their economy, their GDP, and what are the internal and external drivers of their economies.
Sure.
So to understand the international affair decisions and the global decisions a foreign government is making, understanding their economic imperatives and understanding the business imperatives that are there really become a fundamental part. And it becomes very difficult to separate the two, because decisions on one affect the decisions on the other. And a lot of the international affair bases, especially here in the United States and all over the world, are governed by their national imperatives, which are by and large economic.
Absolutely. I don't think I've really asked you where or how did you decide, or what led you to become not only foreign affairs officer, but where did this global curiosity, global affairs interest come from?
I would love to say that it started when I was, young or in high school or something, but it really didn't. I had never traveled outside the United States until I was in college. And I think it started, if I'm as I was thinking about that, is I don't think it started until my sophomore year of college, when I had thought I was going to be an aerospace engineer and realized I really didn't like math and decided engineering probably was not the right way to go. So I took a course on the Introduction to Middle Eastern and Islamic History. And it was an elective to do a history major. And I took the course and absolutely fell in love with not only the Middle East as a region, but just the study of history and global history as a whole. Mm-hmm. And from there, it really took off. I double majored in history and political science, all on a foreign affairs nexus. My career in the military took me all over Europe, Central Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. I really grew to love experiencing different cultures. I grew to love experiencing the people I met all over the world. And that passion really started developing more and more as I continued to travel. And as that grew, it sort of drew me into how do I turn this into an actual career, rather than kind of have it as a fun part of my life. Let me see if I can really dive into it completely. So coming out of the military, I did a master's in foreign affairs at Georgetown, and then was fortunate enough to earn an appointment with the State Department, which then allowed me to really truly make this a cornerstone of not only my career, but my life.
Oh, fantastic. Isn't that great to hear when things align, how life progresses, opportunities come, and then you actually kind of jump in a different direction and it leads.
They do. I really had no intention. I was going to go to law school and kind of go that direction. And I really found myself developing more and more of a passion for this. And the decision to go to graduate school rather than law school to study foreign affairs was really born out of what I enjoyed doing and what I really loved studying and what I loved learning about. And when you can, the adage is always, if you love what you're doing, you're never working. Nice. And I really just grew to absolutely love kind of the study of foreign affairs, the study of foreign policy. I've tended to have a national security angle to most of it. But I just love the interactions and the global interactions with my colleagues overseas and working with other governments and the relationships you can build from those.
Wow. You touch upon that you were stationed abroad, affiliated with the State Department. Where were you? Where was that you were posted?
So I've been posted kind of more in a general sense. My focus within and after a few years was the Middle East and Central Asia. So and I worked in a lot of the former Soviet Union sphere. I've been to every country that ends in Stan, which is fun to say because it had some just incredible experiences traveling throughout that diverse region. And really, again, looking at the intersection of countries that are battling with democratization and human rights and growing economies with a legacy holdover of post-Soviet world, along with just the range of problems that are crisscrossing this region and the region where the old Silk Road goes through. So I served throughout there. I did a lot of work out of Washington, but focusing on North Africa and the Middle East, and got the opportunity to travel to most of those regions as well. So my first posting was in Tirana, Albania. And I think a lot of people will say that that first posting tends to be the most memorable just because it's the first experience of being thrown into it. And it was also the first 2 years of my marriage with my wife. So we basically got married, and a week later I was on a plane to Albania. And our first 2 years are us learning to be a couple and learning to live in a foreign country.
Absolutely. Dive in all the way, you know.
Oh, and we have stories of those 2 years that will last us a lifetime. So I think that because it was our first tour and because it was so new to us, that one will probably always and forever stand out as the most memorable one.
Absolutely. I kind of bring you back to your current role, being here in Houston. Any couple points perhaps you would like to share with our viewers, participants about your current role, something that perhaps we have not touched upon yet in the conversation?
Sure. I think, and I'll kind of reference it in by something that sort of surprised me about this role. So I've been in the role just over a year and a half. And what has really surprised me about the role I have here within a city is that having come from the national government and looking at it from the United States perspective, dealing with foreign and international governments, I have always sort of discounted the power and role of cities, and the power and role that cities can play in the international environment, both from an economic and a political standpoint.
Yeah.
Coming to the city of Houston, fourth largest city in the United States, one of the largest GDPs in the world, I was struck by how important Houston can play and how important of a role cities play in the international environment. And when we travel abroad, and when Mayor Turner and any of the mayors of Houston have traveled internationally, we're greeted at a level that shocked me, that we are meeting directly with the ministers. We are meeting directly with the heads of state. And that's largely because I think back to the first point is they understand Houston's power and strength in a global economic sense.
Yeah.
They understand Houston's ability to help those countries in their economic capacity building.
Sure.
We have some of the best universities in the United States, economies, businesses that have all made Houston home. And we have a lot to offer an international audience. And likewise, people from all over the world want to come to Houston because of how much the city has to offer. And that was something I hadn't fully appreciated until I came to the city and came into this kind of role where I could see the breadth and the depth of the power and influence a city can have on the global dialogue.
Absolutely, because we are bigger than some countries, and even bigger than some countries combined, as you to the points that you just referenced. So,
and that's been an exciting part with Houston. You know, we've in a normal year, we host multiple heads of state, you know, dozens of ministers across all levels. So we really have to be almost and my office really needs to serve as a mini microcosm of the State Department, where we have to have the full range of protocol and diplomatic affairs, political affairs, and our trade and economic role to really help serve the citizens of the city.
Wonderful. Certainly have a busy schedule, I'm sure busy daily routine as well. And as we go through this conversation, it's always important to know how individual like yourself have a balance to your life, hobbies, passions. What balances Chris out when you leave your work hat?
Well, I go home and I'm very quickly humbled by my two daughters. I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old who both view me as kind of their person to do whatever it is that they want me to do at that time. So I tend to come home from here and I on my commute is kind of a decompressed time, because I know as soon as I arrive home, I have my two little girls that I want to ensure I can give them my full attention. So that is probably how I spend, the majority of my free time, is catering to their every whim, which is, and I have found unbelievably rewarding and a lot of fun.
Absolutely. As you know, Chris, education is a very important part of our council's mission. And I would say actually that education is what we do in a very short version. And we do that through various opportunities. We start with high school students to university students and continue our membership friends and other Houstonians that we can provide this opportunity to be with us. We have established what's called Student World Affairs Councils in close to 40 Houston area schools. I'm very, very proud of it, and we keep increasing the presence. And I had reached out to some of the students who are part of these Student World Affairs councils to submit some questions for me to ask you. So some of the questions that are coming from them. So here goes. Tell us about your favorite country or region of the world and why. Albania?
So Albania is an exceedingly memorable one. I'll put more of a region that I really enjoyed Central Asia. The combination of deep history through the centuries of different civilizations that have risen and fallen through there, the challenges they face on a globalizing economy and trying to develop a state identity and dealing with a lot of challenges of coming through different governmental systems really was fascinating. And the people there are just such a incredibly warm person. Even when I couldn't speak the language, I enjoyed my time immensely traveling through the countries and meeting the people that are there.
Wonderful. Next is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And perhaps what?
Well, I would say I would have a tough time choosing between the two. One would be I want to fly, because traveling just takes a long time. And if I could fly myself, I can bypass airports and I can quickly get from point to point. Maybe teleporting more than flying, depending on how that looks. And the second one, I guess, would be time travel. And again, I base that on, I studied history. And so you study history, you read lots of books, you read all the reports, but to go in, there's nothing like seeing it for yourself. And there's nothing like seeing the history as it was at that time. And I know some of the global tours the World Affairs Council has taken is an opportunity to do that. Like back to Central Asia, going to Samarkand in Uzbekistan was just one of the most incredible places I've ever been and seen, because of the colors and the vibrancy and the architecture and the meaning and centralized part of life that was for so many people. Seeing those kinds of things back when they were at the center would be an incredible opportunity.
Absolutely. A little bit back to Houston. In regards to Houston being a global city, as we have referenced quite a few times today, what are some of your favorites, aspects, qualities of our city?
I'm going to start with the food, because I do like to eat. And that's one of the things. I moved here from Washington, D.C. And in Washington, it's a global environment. It's the nation's capital, and all the world is resident there. I was surprised when I came to Houston to find that, and even more, that I can, as the mayor often says, you can travel around the world just in the time of driving around the city of Houston. And you can find food, you can find culture, you can find heritage, museums that really truly reflect the world. And that is unique in American cities. And Houston really is on par with none, really, that have those kinds of opportunities to feel global in a single city.
Wonderful. And Chris, before we finish our dialogue today, any last thoughts perhaps for the upcoming global leaders going forward? Maybe what are some traits that you see others should work on to help them be that global leader in the future?
Sure. One thing I think that a lot of people discount sometimes is, and something that's really served me extremely well, and something I like to impart on people, and there's two parts to this. One is relationships, and the real importance of building relationships with your counterparts, be those friends or be those peers that you're working with, or be those individuals on the other side of a negotiating table in a diplomatic context. That when you build relationships, you learn more about their point of view. You learn more about why they are making the decisions that they're making. You learn more about what their priorities are and why they're thinking the way they are. So that way, when you are negotiating an arms control treaty, or negotiating food and water rights, or just having a conversation over dinner, you can really better understand why they're thinking the way they are, why they're taking the positions that they are. And then if you have those strong relationships at a time that you don't have a need, when you really do need something, it's not based on just an ask for a favor. It's based on a true, honest relationship where the two sides are able and willing to help one another with whatever that may be. And I've seen that in my professional life many, many, many times, where the relationships I developed years before, I either need to call on, or they feel a need to call on me for whatever it might be. And it's because we spent time building that friendship and those genuine lines of understanding that we're able to get something done. The second part of that is the value of stories. And I think the World Affairs Council is one of the best at this, is that getting people on, like I am now, and all the speakers that you've had, to tell stories about what they've done and where they've been. Because it's those stories that then impart the wisdom and the ideas and the values that others can take forward. And viewing those stories as learning opportunities has been something that's greatly enriched me, because countless times I found myself somewhere in the world and I'm in a situation and suddenly I'm remembering a story that an old retired Foreign Service officer had told me about his experience 50 years ago. And suddenly I'm doing the same thing because I have an idea of how to understand the situation. So the power of stories is invaluable. Start building them now and telling them forever.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to wrap up our dialogue today. Chris, just once more, is our honor, pleasure to recognize you as the World Affairs Council's Global Leader of Influence. We cherish, like you said, friendship with you, with Mayor's Office and your team, and certainly look forward to many new opportunities to come. Thank you, Chris, again for the dialogue, and wish you a successful afternoon.
Thank you very much.